Hey guys, welcome to session 2. This is our second session, obviously, of our NCTM Resources Professional Development for this summer. So welcome back. I hope you found that first session something that benefited you, and also just maybe even some affirmations in there, some time to think, oh yeah, I do that, and that's good. So as we move into session number 2, we're going to shift from just looking at the NCTM website and some of those pieces that we did in session 1 to looking at what the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, or NCDPI, provides for us as educators and as folks in the field, and then also take a look at our first 2 articles. So we're going to kind of dive right in here. We're going to begin at the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction's overall wiki space. So just want to make sure that everybody is aware of this page. Let me scroll up here just a little bit. This is just the main wiki page for NCDPI, and so sometimes I forget this is here, and so I just like to bring that back out. Like, hey, here's a good place to go regardless of the content you teach. So with, I think, all of you in this session being elementary, it makes good sense because we need a place to go find our social studies resources and our science resources and all those pieces. So you'll see a lot of things here on this wiki space, but this is kind of the clearinghouse. And so you'll see all kinds of different options in here, including summer institutes and K-3 assessments, all those pieces. But we're going to scroll down here to the bottom left corner. In the bottom left corner is kind of the I don't want to say core content areas, but it's kind of probably the most prevalent content areas of what we teach. And so you'll see right kind of here in the middle is our mathematics link to the wiki space. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And you'll notice that it opens a new tab, or you may not notice it, but it's going to open in a new tab so I can flip back and forth if I'm not losing the overall wiki space, in other words. And so here, this is our North Carolina Department of Public Instruction's math page, and this is the front page. The beauty of this page is it gets updated fairly regularly. The web page itself has to go through a lot of other levels of approval and checks and balances and all those fun things, but the wiki space is a place that NCDPI can put things out even in draft form. So definitely the place that I spend the most of my time when it comes to looking for resources for teachers, resources for myself, and things like this. So let's take a look at what is here and making sure that we're all aware of what's here, kind of how it ties into this professional development on NCTM resources. The main reason that I make this connection, and hopefully this will make sense to you, is that NCDPI's math section is pretty closely tied to the the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, and so a lot of the pieces you'll see in here are in they're directly correlated or connected to what you will find in NCTM's resources. So now that I've stumbled through that enough, let's go ahead and jump in here and take a look. So just going to treat it as if this is relatively new, and we know it's going to be review for some of you. But you will notice over on the left-hand column here, so over here on this side, we've got a couple different links, some that are new even just now. Within the last couple weeks, we've seen this section emerge, which are our current 2010 standards, and then we also have what have now been adopted for the 2017 K-8 standards. But again, these are not going into effect for kids until the 2018-2019 school year. So we're still a year away from that. But we want to make sure that we're keeping our eyes on those and thinking about where potential gaps will be. Lots more coming on that. We're not going to get bogged down in that for right now. But you will see on this page that we have links to the resources. We've got a page just for elementary. And in middle and high school, we've got some K-12 resources. And then some things for principals and admins and other folks, although some of that is still really good to look at. The nice thing, most of the PD, I shouldn't say any, but most of the professional development the DPI does is archived here. as well as their newsletters and all those other pieces here. So as we check in on what's here, we're going to take a quick look at the revised standards and just what's here. These will be resources, or more resources, many more resources will be coming out here in the fall and as we move forward. But we're going to share a couple of these documents for you to take a look at. So one task that I'm going to ask you to do in this session is to take a look at your grade level, this document, and again I'll attach this to our post here for this session. This document goes grade by grade and strand by strand, and you can take a look. I'm going to scroll ahead here. Sorry if that's really bad to look at on the screen. But take a look at a standard, not a standard, take a look at the standards in your grade and how they are either being reworded, being changed, being moved around, whatever the phrase we want to use there is. So for example, we have order and operations, operations and algebraic thinking, operations and algebraic thinking. Fourth grade are looking at multiplying or dividing to solve word problems, yada, yada, yada. So you had all this wording, right, for all that. And when the team looked at this, and again, this was over several iterations or several tries, it was decided that this was already kind of addressed, and if we could just tie it into OA1, which is the one right above it, and then OA3, which is the one right below it, we didn't need three separate standards there, or three separate clarifying objectives. So you'll see that throughout the grade levels, where it didn't necessarily go away, it just moved into another area, and then you'll find some that went away, and find some things that have just, some that went away, some that have been added, and then some that have been merged into other standards. So see one of those examples here under number in base 10, new standard number, a concept from number in base 10 2. So some of it is about clarification. That might seem like a lot, and it certainly is. So let's go back and say, well, how do I distill that down into a little bit easier way to wrap my head around it to begin with? So what I just did is I clicked over on the left column under 2017 K-8 standards, clicked right there. And when I clicked there, that brought me to this page. So on this page, you've got your standards, right? We're going to look at this standard comparison, and then you have your, the standard comparison is what we just looked at. So we checked that. So that's the part you're going to look at for detail about what has remained the same, what has changed. But for right now, we're going to go down here to the bottom of the screen where you see the K-8 major revisions at a glance. So I would encourage you to start here. So since we were just looking at fourth grade, let me go to the 3.5 document. And on the 3.5 document, you'll see, surprisingly, third, fourth, and fifth grade. It's kind of a one-pager on what are the major changes. So in general, what are the changes up here at the top? So what do we have in terms of just overall at this grade level, what has changed? And then what might I want to consider this year and as I move forward? So one of those being that if something is shared, say in second grade in the standards, it's not necessarily repeated in the standards for third grade or for fourth grade. So we make sure that it's assuming, if we're looking at fourth grade standards, it's assuming that we understand the grade levels before us. We should also, of course, know where kids are going after they leave us as well. So looking at that, that brings us to what is in third grade, what's in fourth grade, and what's in fifth grade. Again, just the major changes. So I would hope that for those of you who have taught for a while, you're going to see some of the things in here that you may have said, why is that in my grade being moved around or changed or reworded? So these are just the major changes. So just picking one kind of at random here, there's one here, number in base 10, number 2, that talks about powers of 10. So again, we still need to teach that this current school year, but moving forward, that'll be moved up to 6th grade. So exponents denoting powers of 10 was moved to 6th grade. For 17-18, still going to be testable objective, but not moving forward after that. So you might still decide after that it's still worth your time to teach it, and that's totally your right as a teacher. So you've got this page, which are the major, not the major, these are all the changes to the K-8 standard. So please share this around your teams. We're going to be working throughout this year to make sure that people have all the information they need about the new standards and have a little bit of time to peruse them. But more importantly to this group, or maybe of second importance, is that we take a look at what's in the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction's resources for our grade levels. And of course, we're not going to go through each and every grade level here because you're going to get to do that. And many of you have done that 1 million times already, and that's great. So when we look here at our resources for our grade levels, again, just to make sure we know where I just clicked. So we went over here to the left-hand column and clicked on elementary resources. You'll notice that once we got here, we have a specific page for each grade level. We also have the contact information for Kitty Rutherford and Denise Schultz. Kitty tends to do most of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade answering of questions and those things, and then Denise tends to do the K2, although they both do a great job with either side of it. So when you're looking for somebody to ask a question of course, you can always send those my way. You can send them to each other, but sometimes it's nice to get a clarification from Kitty or from Denise too. So having said that, each grade level's page is a little bit different, but they're mostly the same. So the differences tend to be just about resources and how they're laid out. So I'm going to jump over here to the 5th grade page, and I think all the pages actually are set up this way, with a specific page for standards, a specific page for the resources, assessment pieces, and parent information. So we're going to take a look at each of those 4 here, and then kind of go back and focus in on some of the resources and how we might tie those in with what we're doing here with NCTM resources this summer. Assessment is the one that probably gets jumped over the most, or gets we forget about, that this one's here, or maybe it's just me that forgets that it's there. K2, when you would click on that, you would have a lot more resources about your K2 assessments or your formative tasks. But 3.5 has instructional tasks as well. And so as we go through this summer, some of the times I'm going to ask you to identify another task that might be similar to what you're seeing in an article. You might want to come back here because the DPI has done that. Even if or another part of that is this is just a great resource as you work on planning instruction for the upcoming school year. So looking at how do we make learning visible, right? Like how do I know that a student knows it? I think we're probably most all on the page of just seeing the right numbers on a page may or may not tell us that the kids know the math. Certainly is a better indicator than having the wrong numbers on the page, but we could certainly guess the right numbers. If it's multiple choice, we could certainly guess the right answer. If it's a matter of I used my neighbor's answer, that's another option as well. And sometimes having the wrong answer doesn't tell us everything. Certainly doesn't tell us if I understood it and just made a mistake. So all that discussion about how do I really know what a student knows and how do I know what they're capable of doing. Tasks are one way to certainly get at that. So we go to this page, you'll see there's a link for 3rd, for 4th, and for 5th. And so since we're kind of focusing in on 5th, let's go ahead and click over here. One you will notice, I believe, when you get into the tasks, if you haven't done a lot with tasks yet, you'll notice that these are not lesson plans. They will tell you what to do, but these are all things that are assuming either we're trying to figure out what do kids already know so that I know how to speed up. Maybe it's in the middle of a series of instruction where I'm giving a task to figure out are kids understanding what I think they're understanding, and it may even be at the end where I'm using it as more of a summative kind of task. Although all of these are meant to be informative in what they do. In other words, guiding me as the teacher, not necessarily worried about, does this kid have an A, B, C, or D, but really worried more about what does this child know, and then how can I help move them forward. So you'll see these are put together in terms of each of the domains. So operations, algebraic thinking, numbers in base 10, fractions, all those pieces. So let's just grab this one on measurement, right? So this one says convert like measurement units within a measurement system, or I can do represent and interpret data, or I can do geometric measurement concepts. Or I can grab all three at once if I want to. You notice this far right column is a compiled document, so you can grab them all at once if you want. So let's just grab that very first one under measurement and data, just to take a look. So who ran farther or long jumps? You'll notice there are two tasks. That's certainly purposeful. You want to make sure you have more than one task to look at. So you can see we've got the domain. We can see where it fits in terms of the cluster of standards, what standards it's specifically looking at. It'll tell you what materials you have and then give you the task itself. So looking at this, we can see we're given 4 students. We're given different lengths that they jumped. And then kids are being asked to put them in order and then added another student there. So, and then we can rank those in terms of a level 1, a level 2, or a level 3 response. There's a worksheet style piece that goes with it. So you've got that if you wanted to hand something out or put it up on a smart board and see. I think sometimes when we think about tasks, and certainly some tasks are more cognitively demanding than others, and some tasks take a little bit longer than others. But sometimes when we talk about tasks, people, or I've noticed that some people get just scared off by the concept of tasks and thinking that, well, my kids can't do that either because it's going to be too hard because it's a task, or because, well, my kids just need regular problems. And we look at this, and this one is not a very, it certainly is challenging enough, but it is not too far off from what we probably see in a typical classroom, right? So sometimes just looking at the tasks is a good piece. So let's just compare that to the first task, which was who ran farther. Again, very similar layout, preparing for a race. The table shows the amount that each person ran. We can see, again, we're asking how far did they run during the 4 running days. So now we're having to sum some things up. And again, you've got all that piece, and then at the end, you've got kind of the student worksheet, so or a student, so they can work on that. These are generally, I think, meant to be independent, but you can certainly see where you could tweak them to be more collaborative as well. So that was 5th grade. Again, we were looking at under assessment. We were looking at instructional assessment and tasks. You, of course, have your links to EOGs, your released forms, and all that fun stuff. Got some Ready, Set, review materials, again, that are put out by DPI for this purpose, and then just some other resources for assessment. Assessment, not my favorite part, so I'm going to start with that. So, parent information. When we click here, we have, let me scroll down here, just different pieces for parents to know about things that are available to a 5th grader, everything from the math fair. I'm looking to see, yeah, so some just articles about math anxiety. We've got some articles just about best practice and things like that. I was looking for one other piece, which is the summer resources for parents, but I don't see it there, so I'm not gonna hunt there for it. So let's go over to instructional resources. Vocabulary is one piece that we hear a fair amount. People want resources about, so you've got some resources there in terms of how to build vocabulary and what vocabulary to build. The lessons for learning, those of us who have been around for a while remember that we used to have week-by-week essentials, and we had the strategies document. Well, those two pieces have been brought together and were several years ago into the lessons for learning, and so you've got quite a few pieces in here. If you haven't checked out the lessons for learning, definitely worth the time, because they can definitely save you time in planning both practice assignments for class and outside of class for kids. So again, gives you a list of our standards, tells you what the different tasks are within this. So again, another organization of different tasks. And then a number of these are set up kind of in the game format, right? So spin and race. If you've done these for a while, you've probably done some of these games. You may have even prepared them for stations. We'll also then notice, actually after that, we'll notice that we've got the units. Each grade level has at least one unit that's been developed for it. It's not necessarily the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday lesson plan for the unit, but more what is expected. So obviously 5th grade, one of the huge areas is fractions and how do we build kids' understanding of fractions. So you'll see that that is the unit that is provided for us there. And then we've got this whole piece on 5th grade games and how to use games to help build fluency. We've got the resources that were put together as part of the AIG IRP, which is the Instructional Resources Project. And so you've got all kinds of things there, not just for math, by the way. You've got other subjects on that page as well. And then links to a number of other resources. So the DPI resources are rich, and plenty of stuff there to help with for planning, and things that throughout this professional development that you might want to come back to when we're looking at resources for you. This is the standards tab, right? And so we have our current math standards, and again we have this year's math standards, and we have the standards for the upcoming year. We're going to come back here to major work of the grade because that's one of the pieces I'm going to ask you to read over and check out. You get the one-page layouts of the standards. Sometimes it's nice, although these are definitely in teacherese, not necessarily in parent-friendly language, although sometimes it is nice to be able to give parents what these are the kind of things we're going to work on this year, especially somebody who wants more of the technical language. There are better probably resources for sharing with parents as well in terms of what standards are part of 5th grade and what the real focus of 5th grade is. And then you have your unpacking document, right? And so the unpacking document is incredibly powerful. I'm hopeful, sure that you guys have all used the unpacking document. That's one of the places I think most of us go to when we say, well, how far am I supposed to take this standard, or what would that look like in terms of an assessment task or an assessment item? The unpacking documents are there just for that purpose, and they also certainly help with planning as well. The continuums for instruction. We got the progression documents, kind of how ideas grow over the grade. So the part that we wanted to certainly overview all that. That was a huge, important part. We also want to finish here today with one of the parts that's going to lead us to our tasks, and that is the major work of the grade. So we are looking right here at 5th grade's major work, but of course there's a major work for every grade. Hopefully, based on what we just went through there, you'll be able to find your grade level's major work, because that's what we're going to ask you to do, is to come and look at the major work for your grade. If you've looked at it before, that's great. You can look at it again, or if you'd like to look at the surrounding grades, if you're teaching 4th grade, it's really powerful to look at what is expected for 3rd grade. If you're teaching 5th grade, it's really important to know where kids are going for 6th grade or coming to you from in 4th grade. So looking at those grades around you. So whatever makes the most sense for you, again, making sure this has meaning for you. The major work of the grade is not a long document, right? But it is the document that is meant to give us a chance to think about what are the biggest areas in my grade level, right? And then what connects directly to that. So if I'm looking at 5th grade, if I'm looking at the culmination of elementary school, we're looking at these 3 major domains, right? Number in base 10, number and operations with fractions, and measurement and data. It doesn't mean that's all we're going to teach, but that's the vast majority of where we're going to spend our time. We're going to be using a lot of the skills that kids have coming up to us, obviously. So, but these are the major areas that we're going to focus on, right? Like really making sure that we understand place value, really taking a look at expanding in our understanding into decimals and the hundredths place, and how the hundredths place in a decimal form, how that relates to the fractional form, and why do I care, and where will that matter? Definitely when we're looking at fractions, we're starting to look at how to write fractions in different but equivalent forms, so convenient forms of numbers. looking at how I use what I've learned about multiplication and division with now moving that into fractional concepts. So I know how multiplication works, but how is that the same when I'm working with fractions? How is it different? What values do I get when I multiply and divide with fractions? Those kind of things. And then with measurement and data, we're really starting to look at volume, right? And how the concept of volume relates to multiplication and addition. And not just that it's length times width times height gives me the volume of a rectangular shape, but why does that work? And then what happens when it's not a rectangular shape, although that's getting a little beyond the standard. So, and then you have these additional clusters, right? So in order to understand those things, we're probably going to need to have this other piece over here for understanding measurement and data. And then also, like you see there, geometry kind of pop up as well with coordinate planes. So lots of good information in the major work of the grade documents. So one of the tasks that we're going to ask you to do here in this session of, our Edmodo group is going to be to look at your version of the major work of the grade. And as you look at it, think about what is it that really, they're all fundamental, but that your kids struggle with the most. If you're brave enough to tackle what is it that you struggle with the most in terms of instruction. We all know, or I know, that in my teaching there were certain things I was much better at than others. So recognizing those strengths in ourselves allow us to find help and support from other folks. So that major work of the grade component is one big piece of the homework assignment for this session. The other piece, we get to finally jump into some articles. So here we are in session 2, and so originally I was going to try to have a different article for each person in the group, but because we don't know everybody yet, and because that would be a little bit tricky to try to manage online in terms of sharing back, decided for this session we've given everyone 2 articles, and so those 2 articles are the same across the whole group, and they're 2 that, regardless of the grade level we teach, I think probably impact all of us in one way or another. So we'll attach these 2 articles here to our post this week. And the first is this one, and this article comes from a recent issue of Teaching Children Mathematics. Actually, it comes from Math in the Middle School, I think. Let's see. Nope, this is Teaching Children Mathematics. Just kidding. So this one is called, are your students problem performers or problem solvers? One of the reasons I chose this one was because it was it made me want to read it, just with the title, trying to think about what's the difference? Am I performing or am I solving? And so thinking about that in terms of setting up some strategies that can help kids as they problem solve. So as with all the articles in Teaching Children Mathematics or in Math in the Middle School, whichever the journal is, they're always going to use a task that they had or that they asked students to do. And this one isn't letting me scroll down for some reason right now. There we go. And so you'll always see that there is student work. Maybe you'll see their student work right now. It doesn't want to scroll, but that's not important. You'll have access to the article here when you pull it down. You'll have you'll see the student work, and then you'll see how different students solved it, and then sometimes more than just the one task. So you can steal tasks from this article for sure, and B, we're going to be looking at, so what really is that distinction, right? Like, what's the difference between being a problem solver and a problem performer, and how do we encourage one of those behaviors, or other times we kind of want both behaviors? And so I'm just kind of scrolling through the article here so you can see what that article all entails. So given that article is going to take a little bit of time to read, and then we're going to ask you to reflect upon that. This one will most likely, as we put it into Edmodo, be set up as an assignment. So you'll be responding to the assignment, and that'll probably be the same with most of our articles, and then we'll just kind of have a general post about the 2. So the general post is just meant for us to be able to share one with another, but the assignment itself is more so that you can check in with me. We can make sure that we're not just that we're completing the task, but they're making sense to you. So that's one of the articles. So one of the articles are your students' problem performers or problem solvers, and the second one is, for some people, more touchy. Maybe it's touchy for everybody. I don't know. Probably doesn't matter which side of the debate you fall on, and that's this whole idea of homework and what role does homework play. A little bit on what does the research say about the effectiveness of homework and the power or the lack thereof of homework. So making homework matter is the topic of this article, and subtitled "More Meaningful Homework as an Achievable Goal." This one does come out of mathematics teaching in the middle school, but I think we'll all be able to connect to it either on a personal level or on a teacher voice level, hopefully a little bit of both. What I really like about this is all the student work that they provide in here in terms of what different responses kids gave, and thinking, and this teacher really working through her mindset on what do I want out of the homework and what am I getting out of the homework, and then how do I restructure, or do I need to restructure how I'm doing this. So we'll take a look at that one, and again, this one will be set up as an assignment, but then we'll also have kind of the general post available too. So this time we hit right on that 30-minute mark here for session 2. So hopefully that means you've got about 2 hours in terms of reading these articles and posting them. That was the intent of this session. And then in our next session, we'll be really diving into, let's see, I'm looking at my list. Our next session is looking at the 8 mathematical practices and how we use those. And then after that, we'll be getting into each of the domains of math, starting with counting and cardinality. So thank you again for bearing with me as we kind of work through this professional development. I hope, again, that there's good meaning in here for you, and I look forward to seeing you either face-to-face or virtually. So stay in communication, and we look forward to talking again soon.